We can make an emergency plan you all can use when you feel like you're on the verge of crashing out. So these skills come from dialectical behavior therapy. That is my favorite treatment for dealing with emotional dysregulation, which this totally is. So the R in reset stands for recognize and name it. When you feel like you are getting overwhelmed, when you feel like your emotions are rising to that point where you're at risk of crashing out, what I want you to do to start this like reset process is to recognize it and name it. When we put words to emotions, it turns down the volume on those emotions. Again, here's our brain. Let's open it up. In the middle, right over here, limbic system. That is emotions, memories. When this stuff is firing really intensely, you know what you need to do? You need to activate the frontal lobe, this part of your brain over here. Because this part of your brain, it's that higher order executive thinking, planning for the future, integrating all of your thought. When you start to put words to the experience, when you start to describe, I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm getting super stressed, I'm getting super anxious, I feel like I'm about to cry, I'm getting close to a crash out. Even just saying that cools down the amygdala. It cools down the limbic system. It turns down the volume. Turn down the what? It turns down the intensity of the emotional experience you're having it. So just recognize and just name it. That is step one. That might help turn down the volume, and it might also help alert other people that you're getting to that place of overwhelm and you need some extra help. So if you feel like you're on the verge of crashing out, that very first thing you want to do is just name it. It's going to turn down the volume, it's going to turn down the intensity, and it's going to give people a little heads up that that something's going on and that you might need a little bit of help. With a little help from my friends. So recognize it and name it. Now, I'm a big believer in doing the fastest things that are going to help you with the crash out. And the fastest things usually don't involve thinking. They don't involve like, oh, let's just think realistically. Also, spiky point of view incoming. I don't really believe you can change your thoughts very much. I think it's more about getting unstuck with your thoughts, and finding something that turns your attention away from the inside and to the real universe around you, away from the internal universe and to the external universe. Those are the things that are going to help you the most. So one of the things you can do for the reset plan, if you feel like you're crashing out, let's get it to the E. And the first E over here, because I've got another one, is exhale. Exhale long. There's so many different ways to do breathing in a way that helps you with your emotions. But the easiest way to remember this is doing long exhales. You want to slow down the process of exhaling. Because here's what happens. We were talking about the Netflix episode I was on for Mind Explained a little bit before. And in that episode, I show you how hyperventilation can trigger your anxiety. The cool thing is the opposite is true as well. If you slow down the process of breathing, it can trigger your body's natural relaxation response. So we have a sympathetic nervous system which activates all of our emotions, restricts our thinking, tenses our body, fires your heart rate, makes your muscles nice and tense, gets that blood flow moving away from all this stuff and towards your muscles, gives you a sense of action. That is your sympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system undoes all of that. It relaxes your muscles. It slows your breathing. It soothes your heart rate, slows it down. It gets a blood flowing again to all the different parts of your body, right? That feels very nice when that happens. You can trigger that by slowing down your breathing. So you don't have to learn a fancy way of breathing, although you can if you're super into it. But one of the things, if you feel that crash out coming, um, you can start to slow down your breathing. Here's a very simple way you can do it. Let's actually do this together if you're interested and if you're feeling able. If you're someone who's really vulnerable to hyperventilating, you might not want to do this and you might not like doing this. We're going to breathe in for 4. We're going to hold for 4. And then we're going to breathe out for 7. Here's how it works. I'm going to breathe in, hold, slow exhale. Let's do that again. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 7. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 7. Let's do it one more time. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 7. How are you feeling now? Because what I am feeling right now is slow. I feel much slower. My voice sounds different. I feel pretty chill, which can be a problem if you're doing a live stream and you need to keep the energy up. But you probably feel very different, right? Nashel says, in the moment, it is so hard to remember these breathing exercises. In hindsight, I'm like, right, I could have done that breathing technique. I guess it's just practice. It's practice. And it's also, I got many steps here. Nashel, it's about, I don't think it's about remember what I'm about to crash out. Let me think back to Dr. Ali's stream. I remember he had the reset mnemonic, and I remember step 2 of that was having a long exhale. It's not about that. Here's what I like to do. I like to package it. I want to package up the good psychology for you and then give it to you here so you can have a good experience with it. Now I'm thinking of Frozen, and I'm thinking of that guy. What's his name? The guy, the shopkeeper guy. Welcome. You need a rope. I package this and give this to you so that hopefully you can find that one thing that you can try this week. That one thing that sticks with you. And so maybe you don't even remember breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 7. Maybe you don't even remember that. Maybe all you get from this is I remember Ali said just slow it all down. Okay, I'm going to slow my exhales. Just that's it. I'm just going to focus on that. Just take that. If that's all you take, Nigel, awesome. That's going to help you out. Just take one thing. Flora says, I don't drive in freeways because of my anxiety. When my husband is driving the freeway, I do this exercise because I get very anxious. It helps a lot. Even my shoulders get very high. So one of the things, sometimes I tell people who struggle with anxiety, like, first thing you to do when we're going to practice anything, just drop your shoulders. Just drop your shoulders. And I like to tell people just sink into your chair and let gravity take over. For so many of us, we hold the tension in our body. Let gravity take over. For so many of us, that can be so helpful in just getting a little bit out of our head, bringing down that activation that we're feeling in our body. So long exhales is that step 2 of the reset plan to kind of help you with this. The next step is one is actually my favorite one, and that is Shock your senses. Shock your senses. The fastest way to change your thoughts, your feelings, your actions is through your senses. Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. These are our 5 senses. Our brains, our mind, the nervous system, it super prioritizes changes in the environment. We're not really wired to notice stuff that stays the same. We are wired to notice things that change. And we do that through our senses. We can use this to our advantage when we're at risk for crashing out, of flipping out, of losing our cool. We can use this to our advantage. And the fastest way to do this is intentionally trigger a sensory change. And there's so many good ones here. So intense heat, intense cold can trigger it. Splashing really cold water on your face, opening your freezer door and sticking your head in it for just a moment, grabbing ice cubes, taking a hot shower, taking a cold shower, drinking hot beverage. You don't want to burn yourself here, but drinking a warm tea, drinking a very cold beverage. Any of these types of temperature changes work super quickly. But the other way to trigger a temperature change and to notice sensory changes is to get some physical activity going in your body, to do something that completely changes the temperature in your body. So that can be like going for a run. That can be doing some jumping jacks. That can be dancing and listening to the music. But just getting these things going is going to make a very, very different experience. Shock your senses is about doing something that's a real strong, intense experience, like really cold water, going for a really fast run, turning up the music really, really loud, something like that. And that's a little bit different from the second E, which is engage your senses. So what I mean by this is more about grounding yourself. So shock your senses is something really intense. So intense cold, intense heat, intense physical activity, something really big. There's another skill here that I've gone into more detail in another video, but it's called the dive reflex. So when your body thinks you're diving into water, it triggers your body's relaxation response. I've got a whole video on it. Just look for dive reflex, Mattu, it'll come up. But basically, if you fill up your sink with some water, you put your head in there, you hold your breath for about 15, 30 seconds, the dive reflex kicks in, your heart rate goes down really quickly, and it can really put you into a much calmer state. The problem with it is you don't want to do it if you have a heart condition, because it can reduce your heart rate really quickly. So talk to your doctor about it if you're concerned. But there's intense ways of shocking your senses. It's going to help you get out of that crash out. But there's other ways you can use your senses too. So you can use your senses to ground yourself in the environment. So if there is, if you're in a space where someone is yelling at you and saying all of these things, you can ground yourself. You can use your senses to get better connected to your environment. So I got a table right in front of me, so I can hold the table and notice, okay, there's a table here. The table feels kind of cold if it's made out of wood, but it also feels smooth on top and kind of rough on bottom. Just hold it, notice it. Use that to help you feel grounded, to kind of get you through that situation. But you can also, if you're not like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, look at 5 things, touch 4 different things, listen to 3 different sounds, smell 2 different things, and notice a taste in your mouth. If you're not a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of person, you can also engage your senses through your imagination. You can engage your senses by making a visual map in your mind about one of your favorite places to go to. You can go to your happy place. You can think about I can think about, okay, I'm gonna imagine myself at San Diego Comic-Con, and I'm walking through those front doors, and there's a big lobby, and I'm gonna go up that escalator, and now I'm gonna go all the way to the back and through that like atrium area, and then I'm gonna get to the ballroom 20 because I that's where all the cool stuff is that I saw this year, and man, that was really fun. You can just start to visualize yourself actually in that place. It doesn't have to be a big fancy place. Maybe it's like the ice cream store you love going to around the block. You can also make a list in your mind about. I'm gonna make a list about like my favorite songs from this past year. And you'll already start to kind of like hear those songs a little bit. Maybe you start to hear the beat, and that's great. You can get grounded in that experience. Or you can make a list of like, I'm going to make a list of I'm going to rank my favorite Christopher Nolan movies. And you start doing that in your mind. Right now, you're getting grounded in the images of those movies, and you're comparing them, and you're thinking about them. This is a little kind of like recognize it and name it, where you're using this frontal lobe to kind of turn down the volume on the limbic system, the intensity of emotions. It kind of is doing the same thing. So shock your senses with intense temperature, intense activity. Engage your senses by things that are really easy for you to live in and be in that moment, whether it's touching different things and doing 5 4 3 2 1, or it's about engaging lists in your head about things that you really love, or going to a happy place and visualizing yourself in that happy place. The last thing over here is probably the most important one. Nightshell, if none of these other ones are working for you, this is the one. T is take opposite action. Take opposite action. This is probably the most important one to help yourself if you're at risk for crashing out. Taking opposite action. This means literally doing the opposite thing that your emotions want you to do. It is the opposite thing. So when I have misophonia, and my wife is flossing her teeth and it's putting me into rage mode, the thing I want to do is yell and scream and say, don't you realize how horrific that sound is and how I can't get it out of my head? That is what my emotions are driving me to do. What's the opposite of that? The opposite of that isn't to just like not say anything, but it's to get the heck out of there. Get the heck out of this situation. I don't hear another incoming spiky point of view. I don't know where this idea came that to deal with your anger, you have to stay in the situation and like talk through it or work through it. No, a lot of times if your anger is putting you at a place where you're going to crash out, you're going to do something, say something that you might regret, get out of there. Get out of that situation. That's what we call distress tolerance. Sometimes the best thing to do is back away and get out, because the thing with crashing out, again, we got this graph. I keep showing it. Your emotions get really high, and once it get over that place of crashing out, this is where you're at risk for doing something you might regret. So if you feel like, oh no, it's going up, get out of there. Get out of there before you crash out, before you say or do something that you really regret. If you're on the verge of tears because you've gone through a very difficult experience and you were just reminded of that difficult experience, get out of there. Get out of there. Help yourself to bring yourself back down so that you don't have to deal with all the consequences of crashing out. It's not just about anger. Sometimes it's about overwhelm. Sometimes it's about sadness. Sometimes it's you don't want to have a day where you're crying in front of all your coworkers. It's okay to do the opposite, which oftentimes means getting out and removing yourself from this very difficult situation. Totally okay, folks. That is totally okay. There's no problem with that. That comes from dialectical behavior therapy. It comes from a skill called distress tolerance. It comes from a very specific skill called distract with accepts. It's about distraction pushing away so that the emotions that are this high, where you're at risk for crashing out, they come down to here, where you can tolerate it, where you can hold it, where you can move forward and not do the thing that you might regret. So for me, with anger, a lot of it means getting myself out there, watching something on my phone. My go-to video is the 1984 Crystal Light Aerobic Championship. I think it's 84, maybe it's 86, but it's this like ridiculous video on YouTube where all these people in like 1980s spandex are coming out and they're like da 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 da, and it just cracks me up every time. I go from rage, not so much to chuckling, but I go from rage to like, I can handle this. And I stay at I can handle this long enough, and then I can go back into the situation without raging out. That is opposite action. If the thing makes you want to confront, get out of there. If the thing makes you want to avoid, and that might lead to the crash out, where this crash out might be like you're in a meeting and your emotions are at that high place and you want to just run out of the room, and that would be your crash out. Then practice opposite action. How can you stay? If your emotions make you want to think and ruminate over and over again, how can you focus back on the present moment? That's your opposite action, is turning your attention from here to here. So maybe engage your senses, really focus in on the environment, touch different things, or just clue yourself into a certain sound, and that's going to help you just stay in the room. Or maybe you can do something like count the number of times Ken is on my shirt. Maybe just focus on that. And that will help you just to stay in this moment so that you are able to take opposite action and you can stay long enough for the emotions to come from here to here. Maybe it's about doodling in your notebook so you stay in that meeting and you're just focusing on the doodling and you're not crashing out by running out of the room. Opposite action. Find a way to do the thing that's opposite of whatever might lead to the crash out. So these are the reset skills. A quick story over here. When I was in grad school, I had a roommate. I had many roommates. My roommates were all mostly pretty clean and good. I had one roommate, super social, super fun guy, super nice guy. Boy, was he a mess. Never put his dishes away, would grab things, leave them where they are, didn't really take out trash. In retrospect, I know where it came from. I think he was an only child. He didn't really have to do a lot of these chore stuff. Like his family kind of did it for him. But boy, did it make him a bad roommate. So we created this point system where if you don't do the chores that you're supposed to do, someone puts a point on this board. And if that point is co-signed and verified by someone else, then it counts as a point. And if you have that point, then you have to like pay, and you pay by the like having a higher share of the utilities. And we created this whole complicated system, which that was not my design. The other roommates were all economy majors. I wanted to have a design that was more about encouraging good behavior, which they vetoed. They laughed at and vetoed. They're like, PhD psychology student wants to encourage good behavior. No, we're going to implement costs. We created this whole system to manage this roommate. And then one night, he didn't take out his trash. I put a point on the board. And he said, like, well, no one co-signed the point, so it doesn't count. And I lost it. I unleashed every single hurtful thing I could think about this guy. And he got so overwhelmed, and he's like, this is not good. This is not good. When I get angry, I want to break things. This is not good. And then he stormed off, and he locked himself into his room. And I was just furious and fuming. And my other roommates were like, what? So what the heck happened? So to kind of understand this, what you need is a chain analysis. This is a chain analysis right here. So this is the point where I yell at him. And what happened right before is he's saying that he didn't do it, right? And then what happened right after is he stormed off. So he goes to hide. And I'm just still mad. And I stay mad for like that whole night. And then I can't sleep at night. And then it's like super awkward, right? It's super awkward between us. So what we do with a chain analysis is we take that one moment of crash out and then we extend it in time. What happened before? What happened after? And your goal is to go way back to where you can find out where the seed of this idea started. Where did the seed of me yelling at him start? And it really started that day. I remember that day because it was a whole fight over him like not taking out the trash. And I think I had a very long day at school where I was overwhelmed, stressed, all this sort of stuff. And I really didn't want to do my chore, but I did my chore and he didn't do his. And when we ran into this fight, I couldn't control it anymore. I probably also didn't sleep well. I had terrible sleep all throughout grad school. And so to save time and space, because I don't have a lot of space here, sleep was an issue, right? Stress from school was an issue. The chores that I had to do and me being annoyed about the chores that I had to do, that was an issue. And I also think I was hungry. I think I didn't really have dinner. So the cool thing about a chain analysis and why we do this is everything before that moment of crashing out, everything before this part of the chain is one place where we can intervene. So the next time you're in this situation, maybe we work on sleep. Maybe we work to make sure I have food when I need it and I'm giving my body what it needs. Maybe I work on the stress and I just tell someone, man, I had a bad day today. I am really, really exhausted. Maybe if I did that, my other roommate would have been like, don't worry, man, I'll put your dishes away or I'll do this for you, right? Maybe I could have found a better way to communicate with him that it really upsets me when you don't do your chores. That was the thing. We made this whole point system. At no point did anyone ever like talk to him and say like, hey, basically, we want to help you with your chores. And we want to make sure you do your chores because it really hurts us when you don't do these things. We didn't really do that, right? So there's so many points to intervene before. And there's so many things that I could have done after too. This is all about how can we handle the distress? What could we do to reduce the chances of crashing out? What can we do to help ourselves and be kind to ourselves after we have crashed out? And what can we do with emotion regulation to set us up for success in the future? That is how we deal with crashing out. And the thing here is it's about being kind to ourselves, and it's about understanding this happens. And for some of us, it happens much more than it does to others. If you're anyone who's neurodivergent, if you struggle with mental health, you're dealing with more crash outs, and you probably don't have as much permission or opportunity or privileges to crash out. You need to be more on top of this stuff. And for some of us, life is just very hard right now, and we're overwhelmed and undersupported. I think that is the core experience of being human in 2025. We're overwhelmed and undersupported. Flora says, very interesting, the chain analysis. You can separate yourself from the emotions you're feeling. You're not really that. You're just lack of sleep, food, stress. Yes, 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 yes. This is just a thing that happens sometimes. Given the right sequence of events, Of course, a crash out was totally inevitable. And once you see the sequence, these are all different places where you can try something different in the future. And just like we were talking about before in the chat, it's not about trying to do all of these things at once. Just find one place where you can try one thing differently next time. That's enough. That is enough. That is progress. That is movement. That is growth. That is learning. That's all I want us to do, folks, is to find a way to try a little bit of something differently in the future